first video rental stores in the late 1970s carried a few hundred tapes. They rented them out for $5 a night. But that changed when a man named David Cook walked into a small video store in 1985. He noticed the same problem every customer noticed. The new releases were always gone. The shelves were disorganized. So David Cook built a system. He bought a warehouse on North Central Expressway in Dallas, loaded it up with thousands of tapes, and installed computers to track inventory. He called it Blockbuster. The first Blockbuster opened in October 1985, and the difference was immediate. Where other stores had maybe 1,000 titles, Blockbuster had over 8,000. It felt like a supermarket for movies. Within 2 years, David Cook had opened a dozen more locations. Then, in 1987, a man named Wayne Huizenga walked onto the scene. Huizenga had already built waste management into a billion-dollar empire, and he saw what David Cook did not see. This wasn't a video store chain. This was a toll booth. Blockbuster was getting millions from late fees alone. It was a license to print money. Huizenga bought a controlling stake in Blockbuster for $18 million in 1987 and expanded. He opened stores everywhere: strip malls, shopping plazas, gas station lots. By 1989, just 2 years after buying the company, Blockbuster had over 1,100 stores. By 1992, over 3,000. And the late fees? Huizenga leaned into them hard. By the mid-1990s, Blockbuster was collecting more than $800 million a year in late fees alone. Blockbuster became the king. 9,000 stores at its peak, 60,000 employees, a valuation that made Wall Street drool. While Blockbuster was busy counting late fees and opening its 9,000th store, a man in California was getting angry. His name was Reed Hastings. In 1996, he returned a VHS tape to his local Blockbuster. He was 6 days late. The late fee? $40. Hastings was a successful software engineer who had already sold a company for hundreds of millions of dollars. He could afford $40, but the injustice of it stuck in his chest. Blockbuster was charging him $40 for the crime of forgetting. He walked out of that store. A thought formed in his head. He turned to his business partner, Mark Randolph, with an idea. What if, instead of driving to a store, you rented movies online? And what if the movies came to you through the mail? The newly arrived DVDs cost only 32 cents to ship. The math worked. Hastings and Randolph founded a company in August 1997. They called it Netflix. The first year was chaos. Netflix tried selling and renting DVDs online. But Amazon already owned that business. Customers weren't coming. The company was bleeding money. Netflix was dying. But then they came up with an idea. The idea was so simple, yet so terrifying, because it directly attacked Blockbuster's golden goose, the late fee. In 1999, Netflix launched its subscription model. For $15.95 a month, you could rent up to 4 DVDs at a time, keep them as long as you wanted. No late fees, ever. Customers who had been burned by Blockbuster's late fees started paying attention. By the end of 1999, Netflix had 100,000 subscribers. Not huge, but enough to survive. And Blockbuster finally noticed. In the year 2000, Netflix was burning through venture capital like a car with no brakes. Hastings knew they needed a lifeline, so he and Mark Randolph got on a plane and flew to Dallas, Texas, the headquarters of Blockbuster. They walked into a conference room and sat across from John Antioco, the CEO of Blockbuster. The offer was simple. Buy Netflix for $50 million. We'll run your online business. You'll own the future. Antioco remained standing. He did not sit down. He wanted the two men in cheap suits to remember who was in charge. He listened to their pitch. Then he laughed. He said the internet was a niche. Real people wanted to hold a tape in their hands and leave with it that instant. Netflix would never replace the strip mall. Hastings and Randolph flew home empty-handed. Netflix was now out of money. They laid off 40% of their staff. The company was weeks away from death. While Blockbuster celebrated its victory, Hastings went back to work. He cut costs. He streamlined the DVD by mail operation. He built a recommendation engine that learned your taste and suggested movies you'd never heard of. And then, in 2003, Netflix did something no one expected. It turned its first profit, while Blockbuster watched from the sidelines, still laughing. In 2002, Netflix went public on the stock exchange. By 2004, Blockbuster finally woke up. Netflix had over 2 million subscribers. The red envelopes were everywhere. Blockbuster's $800 million toll booth was starting to shrink. So Blockbuster did what any desperate king would do. It copied the Peasant. In August 2004, Blockbuster launched Blockbuster Online. Same model as Netflix. DVDs by mail, no late fees, but with one twist. Blockbuster had thousands of stores. You rent online. You return to any store. No waiting for the mail. Netflix couldn't match that. Blockbuster poured hundreds of millions into the new service. They hired new leadership and built distribution centers across the country. They priced their plan lower than Netflix. By early 2005, Blockbuster Online had over 1 million subscribers. Netflix stock dropped. Investors panicked. Analysts called it a price war. But Blockbuster made a fatal mistake because there was fine print about the late fees. After 7 days, the store quietly charged a restocking fee, then the full price of the movie. Customers noticed the hypocrisy. They sued. Blockbuster lost. The no late fees campaign became a national joke. Trust evaporated overnight. Blockbuster's parent company, Viacom, saw the bleeding and wanted out. In 2004, they spun off Blockbuster as a separate, public company. Blockbuster was now alone, drowning in debt from all those strip mall leases. Meanwhile, Netflix invested every extra dollar into one thing, a bet that seemed insane: streaming. In 2005, the internet was slow. Broadband was in only half of American homes. Streaming meant grainy video, constant buffering, and a tiny selection. Every expert said it was a decade away. Hastings didn't care. He had been laughed at before. In early 2007, Netflix engineers compressed movies into files small enough to stream over DSL and cable. They struck deals with studios for streaming rights. Most studio executives didn't even understand what they were selling. On January 16, 2007, Netflix made the announcement. No discs, no mail, no waiting. While Netflix launched streaming, Blockbuster was closing hundreds of stores. The king was hemorrhaging. But the final blow was still 3 years away, because Blockbuster had one last chance to save itself. Netflix wasn't slowing down. 7.5 million subscribers in 2007, 9 million in 2008, 12 million in 2009. Every single year, the gap between the two companies widened. One was growing, one was dying. In September 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. But the company had a plan. Cut debt by 90%, focus on digital. But it was too late. The toll booth had been empty for years. By 2011, Blockbuster was gone. A shell of itself, bought by Dish Network for pennies. One Blockbuster store still stands today. In Bend, Oregon, a franchise owner named Ken Tischer kept his doors open. The last Blockbuster on Earth. Tourists fly from across the world to take photos in front of it. The story of Netflix destroying Blockbuster is a warning. The king never sees the knife until it is already in his chest. And speaking of kings who laughed at the future, there was another man in another country who built an empire out of pure rage. A man who was rejected by the biggest car company in Italy and spent the rest of his life getting revenge. That is the story of Ferrari. See you there.